Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another live edition of the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. And of course, I'm your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert, and it's great to have our audience with us this evening. Again, I just want to thank all of our viewers for making our show one of the top viewed podcasts here in Northern Virginia. So we so much appreciate the audience, so much appreciate you taking time to join us. Um, and You're out there and you're what makes this whole thing click, because veterans and our veteran audience is the reason why we do this. So again, just want to give a shout out and say thank you to everyone. I also want to thank our sponsors. We look at our sponsors, they've always been such a big help to us. Quest Jewelers in Merrifield, Virginia. You guys have heard me talk about them before. And, now that Valentine's Day is over, Mother's Day is coming. So it seems like there's always a holiday out there that you can use a good jeweler for. So I encourage you to take a look at Quest Fine Jewelers and see what they can do for you. I also want to thank Nationwide IT Services. NIS is a service disabled, veteran owned small business owned by retired Army Warrant Officer C.K. Park. And CK and his crew do an excellent job supporting businesses across the United States. They are there to help your company with whatever you might need help with, whether it's IT support, IT security, training, program management, program development, whatever it is you need. CK and his 400 and some employees across the United States will be there to help you. And I have to give him a shout out too, because he's a big supporter of hiring veterans, as a veteran himself. And in fact, about 40% of his employee base are all veterans. So we appreciate CK and his company for not only sponsoring the show, but continuing to support our veterans after they leave the service. So I want to get into tonight's show, and we're going to bring back a guest that we had on before, Dr. Tina Garcia. The interesting thing is Tina traded in her how can I say, her Juris Doctorate and turned time as a lawyer, and is also an Air Force veteran and a disabled veteran herself. And she has really turned her focus into veteran-centric issues. So Tina, first of all, before we get started, I do want to say thank you again for taking the time to come on the show. You look great. I mean, I haven't seen you in a little while, but you still look like you're going well.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. And not only are you serving now as the chair for the Colorado legislation for veterans bills. And I understand you were just recently here in Washington seeing what Congress was doing in terms of veteran legislation. So I want to talk about that here in just a few minutes. But you're also working as a representative for the United Veterans Coalition, consisting of the VFW and the Paralyzed Veterans in Colorado. So you seem to have spent so much time now that it's just kind of amazing to see what all you're doing. You're also chairman of VAST Solutions, LLC. It's a veteran advocate company. They service disabled women-owned small business and a veteran advocate company. And I know that you also will do work with other organizations besides just veterans, but I know you do a lot of veteran-centric work with VAST Solutions as well. So it seems like you really dove in since the last time that we've talked with you, and I want to kind of talk a little bit about some of that. So if you would, let me get off the platform here, and why don't you, if you would, share with us your trip to Washington and what you were able to observe as that representative for veterans legislation for Colorado.
Thank you, Paul. I'm happy to. I am the legislative chairperson for Colorado's Disabled American Veteran Group. And as the legislative chair, I have the honor to work with state commanders all over the country to go to Washington and help remind the legislators, if you will, that legislators on both sides serve at the honor of the military. It is on the back of our military veterans and our families that these legislators serve. And it was such an honor. DAV has a very, very good legislative platform, has earned a lot of credibility with legislators on both sides. So I was very proud to go spend as much energy as my little old lady body could handle. I was able to take my son, Donovan Garcia, who is not only my business partner in vastsolutions.vet, but Donovan, with his double MBAs and his commitment to serving veterans all across the country. Can you imagine, Paul? My son, Donovan, both his mother and his father are Vietnam era veterans. So
Yeah.
we feel, Donovan's father and myself and his stepmom, that we are very blessed to have Donovan's kind of, MBA and degree in technology and his commitment both to the veterans, but to the veterans services. So it was exciting. I'm also very proud as the first female recognized to wear the combat beret tail into Vietnam. I'm actually very pleased with myself that I did not, as much as I wanted to, I did not choke legislators on either side of the party. I mean, we could just talk and speak candidly about why it's important to take care of our veterans, especially now, Paul. This is an election year. And I see veterans as a way to bridge the controversy between the two political parties. It will be veterans and our ability to help steer this country on to where we need to be to take care of our veterans. So thank you. I enjoyed Washington, D.C.
You know what? It's funny you mentioned that about an election year and veterans. Not too long ago, I had the chair of the Virginia Veterans Vote Organization on the show, retired Army general. And they are pushing, I still get emails from them with some of the things they're doing. And that, of course, that's here in the state of Virginia. They are really getting the word out to veterans about voting in the upcoming election. So it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that as far as your trip to Washington. So tell us a little bit about Vast Solutions and what you're doing.
Well, Vast Solutions was a surprise to me, Paul. Since you and I had a chance to be on the last Veterans podcast, the VA, as well as the SBA, the Small Business Administration, reached out to my son and myself to encourage me to come out of retirement and to start a company, vastsolutions.vet, to help veteran-owned businesses receive their certifications to get contracting preference both at the state and the federal level.
Okay.
I'm so grateful, Paul, because you have so much more authority than I do as a contracts officer for a federal agency. vastsolutions.vet is very proud to have both a VA coach, Ryan Morris. We have our SBA coaches. Our goal, Paul, is to take any veteran that is thinking about starting a company, already has a company. Our goal is to serve as a pipeline to help that veteran-owned business get the certifications necessary to compete and actually get contracting preference. And you and I have talked about this, Paul. it makes sense why the SBA and the VA is doing this, because veteran-owned companies, number one, are the most successful of all small businesses. And it makes sense. Failure is not an option to a military business owner, number one. Number two, veteran-owned businesses hire veteran-owned businesses. We understand the commitment, the above, the beyond, the no excuse to success. So it's been a wonderful few months. The National Disabled American Veterans Group has started a veteran boot camp for any veteran that is thinking or even considering going out and starting a business of their own. Right now, our countries need us. There are so many contract opportunities. And unfortunately, there's some political members of our Congress and our legislature that are really pushing the VA to privatize the VA healthcare, Paul. And as you and I both know, when I'm on Capitol Hill, I like to very gently remind the legislators of the Halliburton experience. Of the Halliburton experience. Veterans need the VA and the VA needs the veterans. And as long as we can work together, some procurements can be privatized. And Cody Davis, for instance, I mean, he's a veteran. He has a veteran-owned business. He takes care of modernizing and using VA protocols to be able to contract with the VA. And as a result, there is a reduction in the cost and an increase in the performance. So we're seeing really, really good results, but there's a lot to go. Thanks for allowing us to talk about that.
Well, I see Cody's actually chimed in. He's watching the show tonight, and we were glad to have him on. There he is. So Cody, we're glad to have you on. We also have Carl Ham watching tonight. Wanted to say hi and said, "Yep, looking forward to hearing you talk, Tina." So, but let me just ask you a hypothetical here. Myself being not only a veteran, retired Army veteran, but a disabled veteran myself. When you were talking about getting certification for a veteran-owned small business, could that certification apply to someone like myself who may not be quite sure what type of business they want to run yet, or maybe they haven't established an LLC yet? Is there part of the certification they could still go through prior to doing that, or do they have to have all of that set up?
That's a great question. Actually, Paul, you hit the nail right on the head. Many veterans, based on what they did in the military, and they did quite well, they have some training that already gives them a leg up. But many of these veterans, like Cody, like Carl, like so many other veterans that are watching, what has to happen is there is a process to get the certification, both at the state and at the federal level. Well, fortunately for VastSolutions.vet, we have a coach, Ryan Morris. He's with Voc Rehab. He is excellent at walking us through the process and putting us in touch with the veterans that he feels are ready to go. All we have to do is help them get the certifications, as well as, since we have these government agencies come, the federal and the state agencies coming to us saying, we know we want to hire veteran-owned small businesses and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. Can you help us locate and certify these veterans so that they'll be able to hit the ground and running. That is a real big issue right now, as you know, Paul, because some of the problems with contracting is right now, sometimes there's labor shortages, interest rates have gone up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when there has been contracts that were let out under the previous administration with the best of intent, well, then all of a sudden we have supply chain shortages. We have other issues that have to be dealt with. And the federal and the state governments know that service disabled and veteran-owned businesses, we have the talent and we have the mindset, failure is not an option, where we get those contracts to performance and make sure that we make our contracts officers look good. It's what you did in the business, you know?
I mean, I just look at it and having several friends who own service disabled veteran businesses or veteran owned businesses, you know, I mean, I look at the work that they do. I look at the support that they give, not only the community, but to veterans, you know, hiring veterans and things like that, that I think become very, very important. But Tina, we're going to take a pause here just a few minutes early, because I want to take this pause now, because when we come back on the other side, I want to get into our chat about veteran caregiving. So I want to take the pause just a few minutes early, so when we get into the chat about caregiving, we don't have to interrupt it. So for those of you out there, hold on for just a minute and we'll be right back after we hear from our sponsors. All right, welcome back, everyone. And you've been watching the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. And of course, our guest tonight is Dr. Tina Garcia, Vast Solution CEO and Veterans Advocate from Colorado. And Tina, welcome back again after the break. And I'm assuming that's Jonathan next to you?
It is Donovan. Nice to meet you, Paul.
Yeah, nice to meet you. So I want to get into our segment here, so that way we got about 20 minutes uninterrupted, and we can talk about veterans caregivers. And I know I can tell you, speaking from personal experience, what that means to me as a disabled veteran. My wife is my personal caregiver, and she is a blessing from above, and she does it all in along with her full-time job and everything else. So I understand how important this is. So Tina, why don't you share with us how you kind of got into this and how the program works?
Well, I'm happy to. Paul, I've had 4 spinal reconstruction surgeries. Most recently, the 5th surgery was to remove some mesh that was holding up my internal organs. And like any other combat veteran, my ego is bigger than probably my entire body. I did not want to admit that I needed a caregiver. The VA hospital here in Denver, Colorado, my benefits coordinators at the DAV, who I think are the best in this state, when the topic was raised that I needed a caregiver provider, it was really hard for me to accept, number one. Number two, I have issues, again, being the first female that was combat certified to Vietnam without any ladies' bathrooms and things. I'm a very private person. So I chose, with the help of the VA, to have my son Donovan trained as my caregiver.
Yeah.
Donovan has the perfect personality. I think he doesn't try to force me to do anything. That would not be good.
Yeah.
What Donovan does do is he helps me and drives me to my appointments. What Donovan also does is he helps me monitor myself, if that makes sense. Because in my world, I am a very tough little old lady, and I can survive anything. Unfortunately, with the neurological damage, my feet give out, or when I just collapse, Donovan is there to make sure that I don't choke on my tongue, that if I vomit when I fall down, that he turns my head over so that I aspirate my vomit.
Yeah.
He also is very, very helpful. Every 3 months, Paul, I have to have 33 injections placed in my face, my head, and my shoulders. And I'm a fighter. So Donovan is a multi-marathoner, and the doctors are so comfortable having him lay over me and control me so that I don't lash out at the people that are trying.
So well, let me ask you, Donovan. So you had to go through a program to be certified as your mom's caregiver. You want to share with us a little bit of what that was like?
Sure. Thanks, Paul. The VA has a Building Better Caregivers program. This is a 6-week program. And I know of a lot of folks that are acting as caregivers without going through the training, which I certainly would recommend against. It's a free training. It's a 6-week program with a group that you're the same group, you're in a cohort. And it really provides various resources to help deal with being a caregiver, not only with some of the responsibilities, but dealing with the personal stress and the difficulty, the time management, many of the aspects that we don't always think about in the process. So it's a wonderful resource. And again, it's free. Prior to being accepted into the program, you do have a conversation or meet with the VA. There's a counselor that's in there to kind of determine your needs and in what capacity you'll be serving as a caregiver, and then to ensure that the program is right for you. So it was a very beneficial program that I found. And again, we were able to check in on a personal level with other folks that are serving as caregivers and kind of talk about the difficulties. And there are, quite a few in this capacity, but sharing that with others, and again, getting feedback from others in the program and from, counselors within the VA on how to deal with that, and certainly how to, again, to be a better caregiver. So it's a wonderful program. I certainly do recommend it. It is free, and it is a resource that is certainly should be, I believe, more advertised, or should be out there more than it really is.
Yeah, so I understand you went through that training. So you contacted the VA and you applied for a caregiver training. They took you through 6 weeks of training, you said. Can you share with us a little bit of what was some of the things that they trained you on?
Sure. And some of that was, making sure time management or ensuring, I guess I would say, how to ensure that you as a caregiver do not burn out, how to create and how to deal with different situations, whether it's, hypotheticals dealing with difficult, if you're being a caregiver for someone who does not necessarily feel that they need to have care, right?
Yeah.
The reason that you're in there.
See, Tina's laughing, and I can identify with that too, because it took me a long time, just like you, Tina, for me to accept the fact that I needed help. And so go ahead, continue on. I'm sorry.
So again, dealing with personalities and difficulties, especially when what is needed oftentimes, whether it be medication, whether it be going to appointments, whether it be other things that may be in their best interest, and they may not want to do these things, and how to deal with, again, the stress that may come about, or having, dealing personally with maybe having limited or much less free time. You want to do something, but hey, you're in this capacity, you're going to need to realize that midnight, 1, 2 a.m. you may be needed for helping medication, for taking someone to the appointment, or something within that, or a fall, which we certainly have unfortunately dealt with on occasion. So and again, there's it's a great way what you're going to work on every week, and then you have counselors and you have other folks in here, and oftentimes it's also a really good resource to see that what you're dealing with more often than not is not as difficult as many others are dealing with. So there's a lot of caregivers out there that have a very, very difficult time, where they're taking care of someone with a lot of issues. And no matter how many I personally have certainly endured or am dealing with, it is nothing compared to what many others out there are. So it's good.
You
also
know what? It's interesting you should say that, because here your mom and I sit, coherent, having this conversation, able to get up, and at least, I've had 3 surgeries on my lower body, including 2 knee replacements. You can't see it too well, but I'm in a sling right now because I just had my shoulder replaced, and, going through, but, I'm still pretty functional as your mom is, at least, fairly functional. And you're right. I've seen some other veterans that have people taking care of them that are, I'm sure it's much, much more difficult, much, much more involved, to take care of some of those veterans. So, I give thanks all the time that despite my challenges, and it took a while for me to admit them, just like Tina said, you don't want to admit them, I'm still here, I'm still functioning, and, I'm not what you would consider, and I hate to use the term, a burden on my wife taking care of me, because she does take good care of me. But you're right. There's different degrees of this that's required. And I think sometimes we tend to overlook that there are people, veterans or sick people, much worse off than, some of us are.
There are. Just one other quick interjection, but probably one of the best things to realize is again, when you're dealing with someone who's in pain, oftentimes the pain can, they may, they may get upset over certain things, and it's not necessarily the situation. It's the pain. It's not you. And again, being able to understand that and separate that, that's probably one of the best resources that I personally receive from that. I'm sure we don't want to get too into too much details, but again, working
Yeah.
early on with Tina here, we would on occasion get into, there'd be a lot of voices that would be raised, and again, shouting matches. She was in pain, she's upset, I'm getting a little stressed out from this, and kind of escalates, and it does no one any good. So I've certainly been able to kind of come to an understanding or realize it's a pain issue or it's a situation issue. It's not her, it's not me, it's not anything else, but it's something that, again, as a caregiver, you're going to have to deal with. So those are the resources that are certainly available. And real quick, before we get too far along, I just wanted to make sure we threw it out there. So for that VA caregiver program, the URL or to get some resources, it is just caregiver.va.gov. So that is one resource that is out there.
So we actually have a question that come in from someone watching, and they ask, Lady Wolf, she asked, what if I don't have a family member that can be a caregiver? Can a trusted friend qualify?
And the answer to that is yes. The more so than I was even aware is the VA vets that caregiver to make sure that they would be a good fit based on the circumstances.
Yeah.
For instance, my son is, he's very respectful. One of my issues is I believe I stay on the planet, that God has a plan for me. And as long as I can help other veterans, then I can stick around. Well, I had a bad habit of bringing homeless veterans home and caring for them and washing their clothes and cooking for them, because then that was a position that I understood about.
Yeah.
However, with my son's training, he was so cute, Paul. The last time I did this, and it's been a few weeks ago, I at least took a picture of the homeless vet in the house so my son would know that I bought the veteran home. And Donovan was so cute, saying, but Mom, you've been so good. Rather than bring a homeless veteran or a homeless anybody home, please just let me take over that.
Yeah.
So, to the answer to the question, yes, you can have. There are professional caregivers out there. And the VA does, in my opinion, a really good job of vetting that. Another point, though, is I'm rather stubborn. Believe it or not, I look like a sweet little old lady, but I'm a very stubborn person. And I don't want to be told I have to eat. And if I don't eat, I fall down. And the falls can be very, very dangerous. So it is interesting to see how Donovan has been trained to how to coax his mother into eating when I don't want to eat.
Yeah.
So that is just an example.
And just to dovetail on that, there are different programs that are catered specifically to family caregivers. The VA does have their program of comprehensive assistance for family caregivers, but it doesn't mean that you can only use a family member. Most often, oftentimes, that is one of the main caregivers that's in there, but you can have, whether it's a trusted friend or other medical professional that's able to do that or handle that in that capacity, they can certainly start.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. So, Lady Wolf, we thank you for the question, and there's your response there. So I'm assuming that I didn't get a chance to look to put it up, but I'm assuming that if you go to the VA website, there is a link on there that talks about the caregiver program, and that's the best way to find it.
You can do a search, but again, the caregiver.va.gov is most likely the best directory. The VA is, as I'm sure many veterans are aware, is very good at having a lot of different information, sometimes that contradicts one another in different locations. So being able to directly either do a search on the VA website for that caregiver or to use the URL.
Go straight to the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Exactly.
Instead of getting secondhand stuff. Yeah, there it is, caregiver.va.gov. Thank you, Cece, for putting that up. Yeah, so it's, I can definitely relate to what you two are sharing here as far as your experience goes. Um, I think one of the biggest problems, and Tina, you mentioned it earlier, and I had it as well. And Donovan, you probably still see it from your mom, the fact that we have so many veterans because of our background in military service and the way we were trained. One of the biggest hurdles is getting that veteran to understand, admit that they need help.
Yes.
And, I brought that topic up a number of times on several of my shows, and we talk about that. And I even did a solo show a while back about that very subject, trying to talk to the veterans and say, you can't do it yourself. You got to have help. So was that, I'm assuming, Donovan, that was a struggle with your mom as well, huh?
It was. And this is something, I mean, she's, been out of the military some time and had a lot of issues related to that, slowly, coming to a head. It wasn't until about 5 years ago that I came out, to specifically deal with that as they continued as well. And I still think to a certain extent, we deal with that, but we're certainly moving in the right direction. And it is a process. And again, having that understanding that it's not necessarily it is for them, but also, again, for the well-being, or there are some benefits that are in there for the rest of the family. If they're in a better place, and oftentimes it helps the rest of the family or others as well.
So I want to ask you, Donovan, if you had a major point or thought that you would like to share with the audience watching out here that's considering caregiving from a caregiver's perspective, what would you share?
Just that there are a couple of things. One, that there are a lot of resources out there should you know where to look. For one, we talked about the VA. Another, Tina works with Disabled American Veterans, the DAV. They have their own caregiver program as well. It's also free. So if you are looking for assistance, and I certainly recommend anyone that is a caregiver seek out resources to see, where those are, because there are resources available to help, whether it's time management or how best to work with who you're taking care of, with the veteran, to make sure that they're taking their medication, how to manage time, and how to manage multiple appointments, how to deal with the stress. But the couple of the main points would be, one, it's always, I would recommend, certainly if you're going to be serving as a caregiver, to have as much information and resources as possible. And for veterans that may be having some difficulty, is that there are a lot of benefits. I think Tina can attest to having a caregiver, and to know that you certainly don't need to go through this alone. And the VA and others have dedicated a lot of resources, time, space, and energy to providing these things for you. It's something that you as a veteran have certainly paid for in advance. It's not something that you should feel guilty about utilizing, because it's already been paid for. You've already given that service. It's something that is available because of what you've already done. So, okay.
If I might, there's also a question: can a vet have two people that share in the caregiving responsibilities? And the answer is an overwhelming yes. For instance, the caregiver program, and because I am fortunate to be a state of Colorado legislative lead, as well as the national legislative lead, Paul, we understand that it is often best for both the caregivers as well as the veterans to have two veterans that are trained to be a caregiver, so that the veteran caregivers will have, with the paid caregiver program, the caregiver can have a week's worth of vacation. The caregiver can receive insurance through the VA. And why the DAV National has been so diligent in pushing this legislation is, for instance, all veterans hopefully will get to be as old as I am.
Hmm.
And part of that, being in that position of being on the planet, in my case, 68 years, I would like for veterans to understand that with the caregiver program, it allows a veteran to live in place, having a
Mhm.
caregiver coming in so that you don't have to leave your home, the home where you've raised your children, the home where you feel comfortable to have a veteran caregiver coming in, taking care of you. The VA does pay on average $30,000 a month for $30,000 a month for a 100% service disabled caregiver to live in a very nice retirement home with their family. Or my choice is to live at home with my caregiver so that I can have a sense of independence.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a burden to a country that I love, that I've fought for, to my family. I want to be able to use the resources that groups like disabled American veterans, veterans, we have fought for these rights. And with your help, Paul, getting the word out, we can help make others more aware of these programs.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You know, it's you know, we just don't think about how important this could be. So, Angela, I want to thank you for your question, and there's your answer. It can be more than one. So we encourage you to, all of you out there listening, to take a look, go to the VA website, you know, look at the program, see what it can do for you veterans who are out there. Don't be afraid to take advantage of this program. You need to be able to feel comfortable knowing that if you need the help, you can get the help. So, Tina, we're going to have to wrap it up, but I want to thank you and Donovan so much for taking the time to come on and share the information about the caregiver program. And it's, I know we're going to have you back on in the future to talk about some other programs, but if you come up with anything else that you want to share in terms of the caregiver program, you guys have my information. We can use the website to make sure that the information gets out from my studio website for my show. We'll make sure the information gets out. And Donovan, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this, because not everybody wants to do this or can do it. So it's admirable that, you know, you're taking the time, even though that's your mother, that you're taking the time to help take care of her at this point. You know, I'm like you, Tina. I'm looking at it too, thinking, you know, I'm 65. I'm hoping I'm going to be around a little while longer and be able to at least, you know, live at home, take care of myself, and you know, not be too much of a burden on my wife as I move forward. But it is important. You're right. The caregiver program is very important, not only to the veteran, but to the families. And I want to thank both of you for taking the time to come on tonight to share about it.
Thank you. And we've put our website there. If anyone has any questions that we can help with, fastsolutions.vet. And Paul, we're looking forward to coming back and talking about the veteran employment programs.
Yeah. We're going to do that in the near future. So we'll definitely set that up. And thank you again. For those of you out there watching the show, there's the information about veteran caregiving. Please go take a look. If you're interested, find out more. Talk to the VA representatives, caregiver.va.gov. Find out how, one, if you're a veteran, you can get help, or two, if you're a family member and you need help, how you can get the help. You can also look on Tina's website there, Vast Solutions. There's the website. I'm sure she will be more than happy to communicate with you about how they can help you with your veteran issues. So I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening, and we hope to see you on our next show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Paul. Thank you.